and we left off Hahurama. Two lines are from the bottom. So the Gemara says as follows: Hahurama. So we'll say there was this Roma literally means a Roman. So the Hagos Vitziyunim changes it to Arama, Aramian. Okay, doesn't make a difference. Meaning there was a person, a Gentile. Techazi lahu gavra. The nafal me'igra la'ara. So we'll say he saw. This is actually an incredible case. He saw a man fall off the roof of his home. So the man had a traumatic fall from the roof of his home. So we'll say what happens as a result of the fall. His stomach split open and his intestines spilled out. Now we'll say the reason we're getting into this story is because yesterday we spoke about the intestines, and specifically what we spoke about is the danger. Remember again, we saw by the bird that if the intestines come out, that does not automatically render it a treifa. What the concern is when they come out, if you try to put them back in, what'll happen? They'll get twisted. And the moment that the intestines get twisted, bad. That makes it a treifa. That we saw the agarat hu ascha v'yechoneneka. The Baruch Hu made us right with bases, with coils. So this man, this Aramean, sees this other guy fall off his roof, and his stomach splits open. His intestines fall out. So what now? We'll say now what this Aramean is afraid of is if he tries to put the intestines back into this person's stomach, they're going to end up getting twisted and Chas Shalom can kill the guy. So he does something very interesting. Asyu librei v'shachte kamei tap of nun zayin ba'achizas einayim. So the Aramean brought the son of the guy who fell off the roof, and he killed him. Now we'll say, he didn't literally kill him, but he made it look like he killed him. In other words, we'll say, what's happening over here? The Aramean wants to startle the guy who fell off the roof. We're going to see why in just a moment. So how does he startle him? By creating an image that he's killing his child, right? That the Aramean is killing the child of the guy who fell off the roof. What happened? Ingid, the victim, we'll call it, the guy who fell off the roof, felt faint. V'insach, he groaned. All lema'ayone, and he literally withdrew his intestines back into his body. So something must have happened either as a result of the gasp or a result of the fright, but ultimately, again, the intestines were drawn back into his body naturally, quote unquote. Because it was natural, therefore there was no concern ultimately with some type of knotting. And therefore, again, as a result, the chayte the krese. And after that, the Aramean stitched up the victim, and Baruch Hashem, all was good. Okay, Nishtabur Aglav. Remember again, about say next case. The Mishnah was that if the legs of the bird, the raglayim, are broken, that does not make the animal a treifa. Says the Gemara, Hahut sana de inkuri de asya lekamei de Rava. So we'll say, so there was this basket of birds, with Rashi says, Ankuri ofos shenishtabur raglayim ba'arkuva lamata. So it says, we're going to see, there was this basket of birds with broken legs, which were brought before Rava. Okay? Bat ke Rava betzomas hagidin. So we'll say Rava checked them specifically again by the area that we call betzomas hagidin. Betzomas hagidin, we'll say there are 16 sinews in the foot of the bird, and they all go ahead and gather at the end of the tibia. So therefore, again, he was checking this particular area. They call it somes hagidin. Va'achshrei, and ultimately, again, Rava declared the birds kosher. Amrav Yehuda, Amrav, shemuta asyad bebehem kshera. So Rav Yehuda said the name of Rav, that ultimately, again, shemuta asyad also means a dislocated foreleg. So if the foreleg of the animal is dislocated, it's still kshera. Shemuta asyarech bebehem treifa. If the thigh bone in the animal is dislocated, that makes the animal a treifa. Shmutas yarech ba'of, right, treifa. If you have a dislocated yarech in the oaf, right, dislocated thigh bone in the bird, ultimately it's going to be a treifa. Shmutas gaf ba'of treifa. It's actually very interesting. Similarly, if you have a dislocated wing, right, a dislocated wing in a bird, that also makes it a treifa. Then we'll say, now, why would a dislocated wing make the animal a treifa? This is actually quite interesting. We're concerned that when there is a dislocated wing, that halacha lamaisa, that wing may end up perforating the lung. That's the concern here. So dislocated wing may end up perforating the lung. Shmuel says, tibadek. Shmuel says, no, even if you have a dislocated wing, I understand that there's a chashash about the lungs, but remember, Rabbi say, there's no need to just declare the animal a treifa, because after you shech the bird, open it up, check the lungs. If the lung was perforated by the dislocated wing, then fine, the animal could be a treifa. But if not, the animal will be perfectly fine. V'chein amar Rabbi Yochanan tibadek. Similarly, again, Rabbi Yochanan said, halacha l'maisa, check it. Right, check the bird. I understand there's a concern when there is a dislocated wing, but there is no need to automatically declare the animal a treifa. Chizkiah said, Ein rea liof. Now, both said we're going to discuss what this statement means because it's a bit enigmatic. But Chizkiah says, sounds like what he's saying is, a bird doesn't have lungs. A bird doesn't have lungs. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan Amar Yeshlo. Rabbi Yochanan says, a bird has lungs. Right? So the Gemara says, V'yeshna ka'ala shel vered ben agafayim. And the lungs of a bird literally look like Ada shel vered, means a rose petal, ben agafayim, in between the wings. To which the Gemara says, okay, Chizkiah, what did you mean when you said, my ein rea liof? What does that mean when you said that the bird doesn't have lungs? Ile modeles leklal. If you want to say that literally, you're saying a bird doesn't have lungs, that's impossible. V'haka chazina de isle. We'll say that can't be true. Why? Because you see that a bird does have lungs. Ella de lo mitrif be. Rather, I will say what it means is that perhaps what Chizkiah was saying is that unlike in a behema, where the puncturing of the lungs creates a treifa situation, by a bird, if the lung is punctured, that does not create a treifa situation. Rashi says, the lo mitrafa ba im nikva. So it says, it's actually quite interesting. So Chizkiah seems to be of the opinion that although normally a perforated lung is a symptom of treifus, by a bird, that may not necessarily apply. To which the Gemara says, is that true? V'hatani, Levi, treifus shamanu chachamim bebehema, kinegdan ba'of. So we'll say ultimately again, yet Levi said that what? The treifus that we mentioned in the case of behema, all of the treifus that have been mentioned by a behema, kinegdan ba'of, all the same treifus that apply by a regular animal, apply by an oaf as well. Yeser alehen oaf, and I will say not only that, but oaf actually has additional cases of treifus. How so? Oaf nishbar ha'etzem afa pishlo nikav krum shamach. We discussed this yesterday. Because by a bird, halacha l'maisa, even if the skull was fractured, even if the brain membrane was not, the animal is still a treifa. So we'll say what this tells me is, remember again, by an animal, puncturing of the skull is not enough to make it a treifa. It has to be a puncturing of the skull as well as a perforation of the brain membrane. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that a bird, when it comes to a bird has all the same treifas as a behema. By a behema, perforated lung is a treifa. So too by a bird, perforated lung should be a treifa. Ella, ein lo. So we'll say, so therefore, what do you mean when it said that Chizkiah said that a bird doesn't have a lung? Ella, ein lo linpol v'lo lichamer. Rather, what Chizkiah meant was as follows: that if you have a bird and fell from a high place, right, and had impact with the ground, you need not be concerned that the lung was damaged. Similarly, if there was a bird that fell into fire for a little bit and then came out of it, you need not be concerned that the lungs were damaged. Look at Rashi. Lo linpal im nafla min agag damar nsicha b'dika intzarach livdok bereya v'lo lichamer b'nafla lo or shabot kina me'ayim shemariko intzarach livdok hares. We'll say, surprisingly, what Chizkiah was saying is as follows: is that the lungs of the bird do not become as easily damaged, and therefore, even though in a regular case of a behema, if the animal falls down from the roof, right, or if the animal falls into the fire, you have to check the lungs when it comes to a bird. If the bird falls off of a heightened area, or the bird comes out of a fire, the halacha is you need not check the lungs. Okay, so the Gemara says, why not? My timer, Amrav Chana, Hoil Varov Tzalosah Maginosas. We'll say, interestingly enough, just because of the anatomy of a bird, so the lungs the ribs really create like a protective cage around the lungs. So because they do, ultimately, again, there's no concern that the lungs may have become punctured as a result of a fall or as a result of fire. Okay. But I will say 1 second. Rabbi Yochanan, though, when he was arguing on Chizkiah, said a bird does have lungs, and in fact, it looks like a rose petal in between the wings. So I'll say the fact that Rabbi Yochanan said that, it makes it sound like what? Michlal, the Chizkiah savar, the Leslie. We'll say it makes it sound like the Chizkiah actually holds that the bird has no lungs. Ella Amri b'ma'arav mishmeid Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, midvarav shal beribi, nikar she'eno baki b'tarnagolin. Rather, listen to this. Rather, they said in Eretz Yisrael, in the name of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, that it sounds like from the words of Beribi. We'll say Beribi means the words of the Great One. It sounds like from the words of Chizkiah that he's not when it comes to birds, right? He's not an expert when it comes to chickens, right? That if supposed to say now what the Gemara is suggesting over here is that it could very well be that Chizkiah meant it quite literally, that birds don't have lungs. And unfortunately, again, that just displayed he was not familiar with the anatomy of chickens. He knew behemoths. I guess he was a meat eater, right? Not a chicken eater, and therefore, again, he just didn't understand the anatomy of chickens. So I will say, so ultimately, again, what you see over here is two different understandings in Chizkiah's statement. Either Chizkiah was literally saying birds don't have lungs, and he was just going ahead and he just was mistaken regarding the anatomy of the chicken. Or possibility number two is he was saying, no, the bird has lungs. That's not the issue over here. Of course the bird has lungs. What he was trying to make a distinction was between the lungs of a behemoth and the lungs of ophos. By behemoth, ultimately, again, both in the case of nefula, where it fell down from the roof to the ground, or it was scorched, you have to be concerned that the lungs were damaged. But by birds, because the rib cage really protects the lungs in a much more dramatic way, you don't have to be concerned for lung damage in the case of nefula or in the case of fire. All right, two different understandings. Amar Rafuna, Amar Rav. Shmutas yarech ba'ov kshera. What's Rav the name of Rav? That if you have a dislocated thigh bone by an oath, the animal is still kosher. It's not a treifa. Amar li Rav Barafuna l'Rafuna v'harabanan dasal mipom madisa. Amur Rav Yehuda Mishmei Dirav, Amur Shmutas Yarech Ba'ov Treifa. Yerabah said, we know that the rabbis who came from Pumbedisa said in the name of Rav Yehuda, who said in the name of Rav, that what? That in fact a dislocated thigh bone in a bird is a treifa. So also, so remember again, just so you understand, they're both quoting the name of Rav. Right? We have two different interpretations about what Rav said. In version number one, Rav is telling me that a dislocated thigh bone does not create a treifa. In version number two, a dislocated thigh bone does create a treifa. So which one is it? Amrale bari nara upashte. So I will say he responded to him that little this means is each river flows according to its direction. Which also is another way of saying there are differences of opinion. Right? There are differences of opinion. So apparently, again, some hold that the dislocated thigh bone is problematic. Others hold that the dislocated thigh bone is not problematic. Azul Rabbi Abba, Ashkechel Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Tikabadik Bitzomes Hagidin. So Rabbi Abba went and he found Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba checking, I will say, what we call that Somes Hagidin. Right, that area where the sinews come together, like we said, right by the end of the drumstick, right by the end of the tibia. So he was checking to see if that area was intact or not. Amrale, lamale markuli hai. Said, Rabbi, why are you checking so much? V'harav huna amarav shmutas yarech ba'ov kshera. Yet we learned that what? That if you have a dislocated thigh bone by the bird, the animal is still kosher. Amrale, ana masnisin yadana. All I know is the Mishnah. What does the Mishnah say? If you have an animal and the leg was cut or the feet were cut from the joint and below, the animal is kosher. Min ha'arkuva ulamala, from the joint and above, ultimately the animal will be puzzle. V'chein shenitel tzomes hagidin. And similarly again, if the tzomes hagidin, I will say, if that area where the sinews coalesce together, if that area is cut, ultimately as well, and Rav said, this is not just true by behemoths, but this is true by oath. Suppose I see, you see that what? That in fact you do have to examine the tzomas hagidin. If that's the case, ishtik d'Rav had'Rav. We'll say, kasha d'Rav had'Rav. We'll say if that's the case, then we have two contradictory rulings in the name of Rav. Ishtik, he was quiet. Amrlei, Dilma shanila bein shmuta lechatucha. So maybe, in fact, there's a difference between something that is dislocated and something that is cut. Well, say, take a look at Rashi. It's the first wide line in Rashi on the bottom. Amrlei, Rabbi Abba, Tilma mida agmere Rav Huna, the shmuta kshera, v'hasim amr v'chin ba'of, shanile bein shmuta lechatucha. Well, say maybe there is a difference between something that is dislocated and something that is cut. Ubishmuta kshera, if something is dislocated, the animal will still be kosher. Va'afilu nitla kula, even if it's totally removed. Ubechatucha treifa, it will say if something is cut, ultimately it becomes a treifa. Tzomes hagidin levadan, even if ultimately again it is only the tzomes hagidin. So the Amar Lei va'at mifarashta shmaisa say d'Rav beferish, right? Beferish Amarav. So he said to him, "You're interpreting this like some type of novel interpretation, but in fact, this was the first explanation of Rav. What did Rav say?" So the Gemara says, "Amarav shmuta kshera chatucha psula." Rav said that ultimately, again, if you have the thigh bone dislocated, ultimately again it will be kosher. But chatucha, if the tzomes hagidin is cut, the animal will be pasul. Va'al titma, and do not wonder about this psak. Shaychotcha mikanu mesa, chotcha mikan v'chaisa. Because also we said there's a distinction. Sometimes you could cut an animal in a certain place and it'll live. Other times you cut in a different place and it'll die. Ki sadik Rabbi Abba ashkechel Rabbi Zera the Yosef v'kamar. So when Rabbi Abba went, he found Rabbi Zera who was sitting and saying as follows: Amar Avun Amar Rav, Shmutas yerech ba'of treifa. If you have a dislocated thigh bone in an animal, the animal is a treifa. Amar lechai dimar. By the life of Rabbi, miyoma desalik mar lahacha, from the day that Rabbi came here, Amud Beis Rabosai, Amud Beis, Havilan pischon peh kamei d'Ravuna. Rashi says, Havile pischon peh kamei d'Ravuna, kilomar huskaknu ledaber b'shmuta serach lefnei Ravuna. We're discussing the case of the dislocated thigh bone in front of Ravuna. Va'amrlan kshera, and Ravuna has always told us that it's kosher. Va'acharei kein ashkechase l'Rav Yirmiyah. But say what happens? V'shalinu va'amrlan shmutas yerach b'ov kshera. V'ashkechase namin Rabbi Yirmiyah, and we found Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. Both say Nun Zayin Amud Beis 57b, 3 lines down. The Yosef v'kabadek b'tzomes hagidin, and he was always checking the area of the tzomes hagidin. V'akshile, and we always asked him, Lo savar lamar had amrav huna amarav shmutas yerach b'ov kshera. Do you not hold of that psak halacha that ultimately again a dislocated thigh bone will still be kosher? And he would always respond, Amar lei, ana masnisin yadana. All I know is what the Mishnah says. What does the Mishnah say? Behema she'nechtechu ragleha. We'll say if you have an animal whose feet were cut, min ha'arkuva ulemata, if it's from the joint and below, kshera, ultimately the animal will be kosher. Min ha'arkuva ulemala, from the joint and above, ultimately psula. The animal will be pasul. V'chein shenital tzomes hagidin. So too again, what if ultimately the tzomes hagidin, right? They both say so. That's the area where the sinews coalesce. If that's cut, right, then also ultimately the animal will be pasul. V'amar Rav Allah. And Rav said regarding this, v'chein ba'of, the same halacha both say applies to birds. V'amilin, we said to him, ich kachi kashe d'Rav ad'Rav. If that's the case, then we have a contradiction on Rav. Ishtik, ultimately he was silent. Va'akshile, and we said to him, V'dilma, shanile l'Rav bein shmut o lechatucha. Maybe Rav makes a distinction between that which is dislocated and that which is cut. Va'amar li, and he said to me, Va'at mifaresh shmaisei d'Rav. Do you think that you're introducing some novel new interpretation of Rav? Beferish Amar Rav. Rav said this explicitly. Shmuta kshera, chatucha psula. If ultimately again it is dislocated, it is kosher. But if it's cut, it is pasul. Va'at ma biyadcha. Hachi Amar Rav Chiyabar Hashi Amar Rav. Shmutas yerech ba'of treifa. So we'll say again, all different opinions here, all on the same topic. So here we have another statement in the name of Rav, that if the thigh bone is dislocated, ultimately the animal will be a treifa. V'chein Amar Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, shmutas yerech ba'of treifa. If the thigh bone is dislocated, the oaf will be a treifa. From Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi, ilmali hava Rabbi Yochanan ba'asra da'oru ba chavrusa la'atera. And we said if had Rabbi Yochanan been in a place where his rabbinic colleagues would have been matir, lo parchis. We'll say lo parchis means literally he wouldn't even tremble. Look at Rashi. Lo parchis, it's the last wide line on top of Rashi. Lo parchis, lo haya yachol lanud knaf ulekanter. He would not, right? He wouldn't even, literally he wouldn't, literally means he wouldn't flap a wing, right? He wouldn't be able to contradict. Vafilu remez davar mitoch shegidolim hein, v'yesh la lira mehem im haya etzlam. So I'll say if Rabbi Yochanan ultimately again were in a place where his chavrusas, right, his fellow rabbinic colleagues who were greater than him, would have passed in Latera, he wouldn't say a thing. Why not? Amrav Chanina, Amarav, Shmutas Yerech Ba'of Kshera. Ultimately, again, the dislocated thigh bone of the oaf is going to be kosher. Fine. The Tarnagolas, Haisalol Rabbi Chanina. And I was saying, one time, Rabbi Chanina had a chicken. What happened with the chicken? Shenishmeta Yerech Shalah. The thigh bone became dislocated. Ve'via lifnei Rebbe, they brought it before Rebbe. Ve'hetira, and Rebbe said it's mutter. Rebbe said the dislocated thigh bone does not make the bird a treifa. Umalcha Rabbi Chanina salted it. V'havamori behalacha letalmidim. So I'll say Rabbi Chanina salted it. Why? To preserve it. What Rabbi Yochanan was doing was he wanted to preserve this chicken so that he could use it ultimately as a teaching tool. See, and what did he say? And he would use it ultimately again as a model to teach the Talmidim. Zeh hitr li Rebbe, zeh hitr li Rebbe. Right? Rebbe permitted this type of chicken to me. Rebbe permitted this type of chicken to me. So I'll say ultimately again he used it to show that Rebbe was matir. Ultimately, again, a chicken with a dislocated thigh bone. So the Gemara says, and what's the halacha? V'les hilchasa kechol hani shmaisisa. The halacha does not follow everything we've said until now. Ella ki ha d'sha'al Rabbi Yossi ben Horai es Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rather, both say, listen to the following case. Rabbi Yossi ben Horai came and he asked Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Kederas kana bekama. So this is actually an interesting case. Look at Rashi. Kederas kana, Rashi says, Kederas kana, he says, kana shenikdar mimena chatichas kamin aruba. What's like? Kana is the trachea. If you have a trachea that is missing a piece of it, how much of the trachea can be missing and the animal still be kosher? Right? So the Gemara says, Amar lo, Mishnah shleima shaninu. He says, well, that's an easy one. It's a Mefursha Mishnah. What does the Mishnah say? Ad ki isser ha'italki. We both say the size of an Italian isser. So an isser is a coin. So if the trachea is missing less than the size of an isser of this type of coin, ultimately the animal will be kosher. Missing more than that type of coin, ultimately again the animal will be a treifa. Amar lo. Suppose they said to now you're going to see we're not switching gears. You're going to see why they're bringing in this story in just a moment. Amar lo. So he said, really, is that true? V'halo Rachel Achas. We'll say first wide line on Zayin of the days. V'halo Rachel Achas Haisa b'shchunaso. There was a certain sheep that was in our neighborhood. Shenikdar kana shala, and its trachea became perforated. Va'asula krumen shalkana. Now both say. Now the assumption over here is going back for just a moment. If the opening of the trachea is more than the size of an isser, then what? The animal is a treifa. Why is the animal a treifa? Why? Because ultimately the animal will die from that injury. That's the assumption. Now the Gemara says, is that true? Because one time there was a sheep in our neighborhood. The sheep ultimately again had a perforated trachea, and it was a large perforation. Va'asula kromin shalkana. And we made it ultimately what? We made it a patch made out of reeds. We made it a bandage. And we bandaged up the hole in the trachea, the chaisa, and the animal lived. So we'll say, so what do you see from here? You see from here that even if the animal has a hole in the trachea larger than the size of an isser, it doesn't make it a treifa. Okay, left untreated, it'll die. But that is a treatable condition. Amar lo, Va'al da'at samich, are you relying on that story for you to teach you that it's not a treifa? V'halo halacha revachas b'Yisrael, but yet there's an explicit halacha in Klal Yisrael, which is shmutas yerech ba'of treifa. We'll say we know that halacha l'maisa, if you have a dislocated thigh bone in an oaf, the animal is a treifa. Yet, the Tarnagolis haisalo Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta. Yet one time there was that episode of a Tarnagolis, right, of a chicken that belonged to Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta. Shenishmata yerach shala. Its thigh bone became dislocated. Va'asulash foferes shalkana. And I will say, what did they do? They made it literally again a tube made out of resource. What it sounds like is they made it some type of like a splint, right? Some type of splint. So what happens? V'chaisa, and the animal was healed. So I'll say, what do you see from there? You see from the dislocated thigh bone should not be a siman treifa. To which the Gemara says, elamai istachal mimar toch yud beis chodeshava hachanami toch yud beis chodeshava. We'll say, to which the Gemara says it's true. In the case of the trachea, the animal was healed. We'll say it was healed for a little while. It still died within 12 months. So too in the case of the dislocated thigh bone, I will say, although you healed it for a little while, ultimately what? It died as a result of the injury. So we'll say, this is actually an interesting idea. Remember again, we're going to get into this towards the bottom of the daf and into tomorrow's daf about a definition of a treifa. Clearly now the Gemara is utilizing a definition that the definition of a treifa is any animal which will die of its condition within 12 months. So that doesn't mean that there aren't things you can do to prolong the temporary lifespan of the animal. So for example, if the animal develops an Isser size hole in its trachea, does the animal die immediately? No. You could patch that up, you could give the animal a couple of nice extra months of life, but the animal will not live out the year. That is a treifa injury. If the bird dislocates its thigh bone, can you go ahead and treat that injury? Sure, you can make it a little bird splint, right? And it won't die immediately, but it will not survive the year. So just because you could treat it for a little bit now in the present, it is still a simin treifa. So the Gemara goes weiter. So this is actually very interesting. Amru alav Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta. This is actually an amazing Gemara. Amazing Gemara. Amru Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta. Sha'askan b'dvarim haya. Rabbi say askan b'dvarim haya he was a curious individual who liked to try to figure things out. A curious person. V'haya osed davar lahotzi milibo. Sh'Rabbi Yehuda. Sh'haya Rabbi Yehuda omer. Im nitla hanotza psula. But remember again in our Mishnah, if you remember again, one of the things that we discussed was that if a bird has its feathers removed, that does not make it a treifa. Rabbi Yehuda said if the notza feathers are removed, remember again, what were the notza? Those are the smaller feathers that mamish protect the flesh itself. Rabbi Yehuda said if those feathers are removed, the animal becomes a treifa. So we'll say Rabbi Shimon Chalafta was a curious kind of individual. So he wanted to do an experiment to show that Rabbi Yehuda was wrong. That even if the bird has its notza feathers removed, the bird can still live. So what was his experiment? Listen to this. So he took a bird, shenitla notza shah. So I'll say he took a bird whose feathers were removed. And what did he do with it? Vehinicha betanor. He put the bird in an oven. And I will say, now understand, this is not like not to kill it, but rather again like a mildly heated oven, right? I'm sorry?
Incubator, they say.
Oh, an incubator. No, an oven, right? So again, but that's not getting so fancy, right? So again, no, you're going to see why this is not, no, I'll tell you why it's not, this is just a regular oven. So he just took a regular oven, he heated it up, he put the bird in there, v'nicha b'tanor, Vitala alel b'matlis shal tarsim. It's very interesting. And he wrapped it in the matlis shal tarsim. I'll say, what's a matlis shal tarsim? Look at Rashi. Vitala alel b'matlis shal tarsim. Karacha b'matlis shal tzarfa nechoshes. So we'll say he wrapped it in like the smock that a copper worker wears. What's the smack of a copper worker? Rashi says, Lekabel afuris shchachi nechoshes, v'shal orhi, v'tometi chama mitoch ovyah, v'gam nechoshes mechamilos. Let's listen to this. So apparently a copper worker, they would wear these thick leather smocks. So because of that, because of the thickness of the leather, the smock itself was always warm. Plus, remember, again, when you're working with copper, you're working in direct contact with the fire. So the thickness of the leather itself generates heat. The fire itself generates heat. Plus, there are copper specks that get on the smock that are heated up by the proximity to the fire as well. So he takes this little bird without its notes of feathers. He puts it in the oven. He wraps it in the copper worker's smock. And what happens? V'gidla kinafayim hachronim yosem min harishon. And Rabbi say, the bird regrew its feathers, all of its feathers, and its feathers were even thicker, meaning the second group of feathers were even thicker than the first. So we'll say, what's happening over here? So Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta was showing Rabbi Yehuda, you're wrong. You're wrong. You said that when a bird loses its notes of feathers, essentially it's a treifa. It's not going to regenerate. I'm showing you right now, you're absolutely wrong. Such a bird, again, you have to take care of it, but such a bird ultimately can regenerate. The Dama Kasar Rabbi Yehuda, treifa mishabachas. That's very interesting. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda just in general holds that a treifa, Rabbi could still get better before it dies. In other words, maybe that animal is still going to die. That bird is still going to die within 12 months. It's just possible that it could get better, meaning it could improve before it dies. To which the Gemara said, that doesn't make sense. I'll tell you why. Im kain, b'midi demitrafa ba, higdila kanafayim achroni yosim yisharon. Does that make sense? Meaning, the treifa of the animal is its lack of feathers. Are you going to tell me now that ultimately, again, the very item that you say it becomes a treifa through can now come back even better than it was in the beginning? That doesn't make any sense. We'll say, therefore, it would appear that Rabbi Shimon Chalafta disproved Rabbi Yehuda's assertion, and even if the animal ultimately, again, loses its notes of feathers, which are the small feathers close to the flesh, that does not make the animal a treifa, for that does have the ability to properly regenerate. My askan b'dvarim. So when we say that Rabbi Shimon Chalafta was a curious individual, used to experiment with stuff, what does that mean? I suppose it's actually quite amazing. Listen to this. So my askan b'dvarim. So listen to this. Tichsev leich el namala. So this is from Koheles. Shlomo HaMelech says, Mishle, excuse me. Leich al namala. Go and look at the ant. Atzal, right? You lazy person. Re'ei drecha. V'chikem. Go and look at its ways. V'chacham. And ultimately, again, become wise. Asher ein lo katzin v'shoter emoshel. For the ant has no ruler, has no king. Tachin bakayitz lachma. Agra b'katzir ma'achalas. Let's listen to this. So Shlomo Melech says, telling the lazy person, right, speaking to the lazy person, if you want to stop being lazy, look at the ant. The ant has no one in charge of it. The ant doesn't have a king. The ant doesn't have someone in charge of it, telling it to work. Yet, the ant is constantly preparing for the winter, constantly preparing for the summer. The musar being, even if you don't have someone who's actively on top of you, telling you, work, you should still go ahead and motivate yourself to accomplish things. Learn this from the ant. So Shimon Chalafta was very curious about this. Amar Ezel Ichzi, Ivadei Huda Lesluhu Malka. I'm curious to see if that's true. In the ant world, is there really no king? Right? In the ant world, is there really no king? Is there really no one in charge of the ants? So let's listen to what he did. Azal b'tkufas Tammuz. So he went during the summertime. Parse liglime akina dishum shemani. He went and he held up his cloak in front of an anthill. So in other words, I guess the ants usually stay inside when it's very hot. He held up his cloak in front of the anthill to provide shade, to make it look like it was much cooler than it was. Nafak asa chad minahu. One of the ants came out of the anthill. Asnoch beis simna. Shimon Chalafta made some type of simon on that ant, so that he would be able to discern that ant from the rest of them. Al Amar Luhu Nafak Tula. So we'll say, so that ant went back in, and apparently told the other ants, come on guys, everybody out, right? The shade is here, it's beautiful outside, come outside. So nafku va'asu, so a whole bunch of ants came out. Dalye liglime, when the ants came out, Rav Shimon Chalafta went ahead and took away the cloak, right? Nafal shimsha, the sun came out, right? The blazing sun came out and hit the ants. Nafal alei v'katle, the rest of the ants attacked and killed the first ant, right? So they ganged up and they killed the first ant. Amar, Shimon Chalafta sees all of this. Shmamina les lu malka. It's clear to me that the ants don't have a king. Why? Di isle harmona de malka lolibo. Because we'll say if they had a king, presumably there's some type of like seder before you kill your own. In other words, if there was a king, there'd have to be some type of seder that the ants would have to go through before killing one of their own. The fact that they just ganged up on this ant and killed him indicates that there's no king of the ants. Maybe the king was there, right? Maybe the king was one of the ants who ganged up on the other. Inami harmona de malka havunikiti. Inami bin malka lamalka, or maybe they were between kings. Dichsiv bayomim mahem ein melech biisa. Because we know again, I will say the way it works. Ultimately, again, it's in general, when you're between kings, anything goes, right? As the pasuk in Shoftim says, it was in those days, there was no melech, ish ayashar be'inav yaseh, and everyone did what they want. Ella, rather the Gemara says, samuch ahewanusa de shlomo. Rather, Reb Shimon Chalafta, don't try to figure things out on your own. Rather, rely on the wisdom of Shlomo HaMelech. If Shlomo says, learn from the ants, then learn from the ants. Shlomo HaMelech has the wisdom, passing that wisdom along to us. There's no need for you to corroborate Solomonic wisdom. And I will say, now all kidding aside, this sugi is actually quite interesting, because if you look at Tosas says something quite dramatic. Ezel, it's the second to last Tosas on the daf. Ezel va'achsi hechi isim milsa, afagav dechi agavna, chashe v'amocher asina, Milagle gabi ahu tamid da amar le Rabbi Yochanan im lo ra'isi lo ha'amanta milagle al divrei chachamim ata. Shavuot said, listen to this. In general, there is this concept that when the chachamim tell me something, Rabbi say, emunas chachamim means what? I believe it, and I don't need to independently corroborate it in order to believe that it's true. If Chazal tell me something, so part of my emunas chachamim is I believe it without independent corroboration. So how is it over here that Reb Shimon Chalafta feels the need to corroborate this piece of Solomonic wisdom? Isn't that a lack of emunas chachamim? Isn't that a lack of belief in the validity of Shlomo HaMelech's words? So why is Shimon Chalafta conducting this whole science experiment to see if Shlomo HaMelech is right? So Tosas gives an amazing answer. Tosas says, Shaini hacha sheba levar hadavar ulodia ech yada Shlomo. So I'll say Tosas' answer is that halacha l'maisa, he wasn't doubting Shlomo Melech's word. He was trying to understand. Shlomo Melech didn't make stuff up. He came to understanding things by looking at nature. Reb Shimon Chalafta wanted to see what Shlomo HaMelech saw in order to be able to come to this conclusion. See, he's not doing this in order to validate this piece of Solomonic wisdom. Rather, he's coming to understand things as Shlomo HaMelech did. I saw brought down about said that the Imre Emes, the Ger Rebbe, has a different answer. The Ger Rebbe says, and this is actually quite amazing. I'm going to quote to you. He says, this case is different. Why? Because what does Shlomo HaMelech say? Shlomo HaMelech said, Leich el Namala. Vahinu, Shehu mitzvah laleches liros. The Imre Emes says, Shimon Chalafta understood that the pasuk says, Lech el Namala. We'll say, what does Lech el Namala mean? What does that mean? Go and see. Shlomo Melech is encouraging us, go and explore the natural world on your own. Go and see what I saw in the world so that you will come to the same level of understanding. And I will say, this is actually quite dramatic, because if you think about this from a hashkafic perspective, what this Gemara is teaching us, as I will say, what do I need this story for? What this Gemara is teaching us is something really incredible. And I will say, there's almost like this dialectic that exists within Yiddishkeit. There are things that we are just supposed to believe because they're beliefs, and there are things that we are supposed to go out and explore in order to understand. There are things that ultimately, again, I accept, perhaps because I can't really come to understand them on my own, so I accept them to be true. And then there's this lech idea. There are these things, go out and understand the world. Go out and understand yourself. Go out and understand how things work. This incredible dialectic, this incredible two-pronged approach to the cultivation of emunah. Things you have to accept as reality, and things you mamish have to try to understand using your intellect, using your neshama to come to a comprehensive understanding. All right, good. Let's begin the next sugya. Amrav Huna. Simon l'treifa, Yud Beis Chodesh. So we'll say now, it's interesting. Now that we've spent so much time speaking about treifa, we actually need a definition. What is the definition of a treifa? So Rav Huna says a treifa is an animal that cannot live for more than 12 months. That's a treifa. The Gemara says, Meisvei, similar treifa, kol she'ino yoledes. So what's the Brisa says? A treifa is an animal which cannot give birth. Rabbi Shmuel Silber Omer, mishabechas v'holachas. Rabbi Shmuel Silber says, even if the animal, quote unquote, improves its condition, bi'adua shikshera. So I'm sorry, if the animal improves its condition, that's an indication that the animal is kosher. Bisnavna v'holachas. If the animal ultimately again declines, bi'adua shitreifa. Ultimately, Rabbi Omer, similar treifa shloshim yom. Rabbi says, Rabbi said, that's what? A treifa doesn't live for more than 30 days. Amrulo, v'halo harbe miskaimo shtayim v'shalosh shanim. That's not true. We'll say there are a lot of animals that have simone treifas that live for 2 or 3 years. Tanahi, to which the Gemara says, ultimately, again, this entire discussion is a machlokes. We'll stop over here for today. We're going to pick up a Mir session tomorrow with a really very important sugya. What is the definition ultimately of treifa? Shkach, we'll say.